Good evening and welcome to Nelson Nightline, Shaw Cable's live phone-in talk show. I'm Morrie Zaitlin and I'll be your host tonight, along with my regular co-host Marianne. This year to date, building permit values have nearly tripled to about $24 million versus about $8 million during the same period last year. This includes the new multi-storied government building now under construction on Victoria Street and more than 100 new single-family dwellings and multiple family residential units being built or in the process of being built. However, while there is a building boom, the demand for homes and rental units far outreach the supply. Nelson has a vacancy rate estimated at about only 0.4%. At the same time, our population is growing. Tonight on Nelson Nightline, we're going to look at the local housing situation with two guests. Judy Gayton, the city's housing consultant, responsible for coordinating the development of both Cedar Grove, a low-income rental housing for seniors and families, and the Links, a CMHC-sponsored co-op. As well, we have Jennifer Stanger, a former Nelsonite who recently moved back to Nelson to develop a 42-unit housing project now under construction on High Street. But first, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Marianne Bond. Good evening, Marianne.
Good evening, Morrie.
How are you doing?
I'm just fine, thanks. How are you?
Good, good.
Good.
Before we start tonight, before we meet our guests, we're going to run our regular streeter interviews. We went out and asked people if they or anyone they knew had experienced any problems finding accommodations here. When we return, we'd like to hear from you, our viewers, on the topic. Our lines are open now. Our phone number is 354-4200. What are you doing to try and find a house?
Looking through the newspapers, Kootenai, Nelson Daily News, no success, just expensive.
What type of accommodation are you looking for?
One-bedroom apartment, two-bedroom apartment type thing. Right now all I can afford is $350, and most of the places here are $400 and up, and right now I don't live in a place. I'm house-sitting type thing, living in a car.
Do you know other people that have had the same problem?
I know some people, other people who live at friend's house, staying on the couch type thing, but nothing's really come up. So basically we're trying to get together and find places, but still finding a decent place is hard in Nelson. I always had to go outside of Nelson.
And they have to be out of the place in Nelson where they're staying now, and they can't find a house to buy, and they want to very much.
And they're actually looking to buy a place?
Yes, and they can't find that either.
Is there problems in Castlegar, housing vacancy rates and stuff like that?
Yeah, there is.
What's the problem, you figure?
Well, just a big influx of people coming to the area. I know we have a few expansion projects going on in Castlegar, and people are looking for short-term housing right now in Castlegar. And in Nelson, probably just, I don't know what it is, but it seems to be a boom to Nelson economy, and people want to live here.
It took me about 3 months to find a place, and when I did, there was like 10 people already called for the place. But finally I got a tip on one, so I just went straight there and I got it. But I was lucky.
Without seeing an advertisement?
Without seeing the advertisement, just a tip I got from a friend, yeah. And it's too expensive too. The rates they're charging nowadays, it's ridiculous.
Why do you think this is? Why is it?
I have no idea. Maybe people love Nelson or something, I don't know.
We know some people that were looking around and they're having some problems finding houses, a place to rent.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, I don't know, people coming in buying up houses from places like Vancouver, and they want to live in the houses, they don't want to rent them out.
Well, things are going pretty fast, I think, right now.
Yes?
Yes.
People are buying fast?
Oh, yes, they're buying up the older homes.
And living in them?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so.
And what about the vacancy for rentals? Do you know what that's like there?
Apparently, they're not hardly any to rent. There's very few.
Do you know why?
I think they're buying them from the coast, from what I hear.
Yes, eh?
I have experienced problems, yeah. I'm presently living at home with my mom and my girlfriend, and that's because I can't afford what is available.
And why do you think the prices are so high?
That I don't know, because they used to be lower. I remember for $300 you could get a decent little house. Now you can't even look at a place like that.
No, I live in a trailer, but rent's really high around here.
Do you know why that is?
No idea. We go to trail at Castlegar, it's cheap, but not Nelson.
Well, actually, I've heard a lot of talk about individual people and they're having a hard time finding both houses, and basically rental units they're expensive. Too expensive as far as my understanding is, and 3-bedroom houses now are going between $8,000 and $1,000. A lot of people can't afford it. It's too expensive, but
Do you see any solution now?
I don't really see any solution in the foreseeable future, simply because Nelson's a nice area. And it's just, I don't think it's going to change. You know, it's how they're going to resolve that, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's definitely too expensive both ways. And taxes are also very expensive too.
A lot of people bought up the houses, less people rent per house, and I guess the population is growing again.
High rent costs, extremely high rent costs.
Nothing available.
Everybody's selling these days. Everybody's selling their houses, and it's really bad for the renters because there's a lot of local people who are renting, and because they're selling so much stuff, all the houses, because they can get good money for it right now, then there's no places for the renters anymore.
My dad rents the downstairs of our house, and I think it's the most affordable place in Nelson right now.
Yeah.
So just because he doesn't feel like scamming people. Rents are going really high, and it's not good.
They can get away with it now because so many people are here. So many people want to come here. So.
Why are so many people here?
Why? Because everyone wants to live in a small place that's safe, that has as many possibilities as Nelson has, I guess.
What can you tell us?
Not much, don't ask her.
There are no apartments or anything available for people. I have lots of friends who wanted to move to Nelson, but they just can't find a place to stay. So.
Yeah, everybody's living on the outskirts now because there's nothing in Nelson.
There's people living out the
Which is bad.
Great, thanks a lot.
Welcome a lot.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. On tonight's show, we're examining housing in Nelson. Our guests are Judy Gayton and Jennifer Stanger. Judy is the city's housing consultant responsible for coordinating the development of both Cedar Grove Estates, a 40-unit, low-income rental apartment building townhouse complex for seniors and families, as well as the Links, a 19-unit CMHA-sponsored co-op. Jennifer Stanger, a former Nelsonite, recently moved back to the city to develop a 42-unit housing project on Hyde Street. Welcome, Judy. Welcome, Jennifer.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome. Glad to be here.
Good.
Coming out on a holiday and all. I'm the only one with my poppy on tonight.
Oh, you're right.
Judy, we'll start with you. Why is it so important that we have a variety of housing options in Nelson?
Well, I think that some of your clips there from the people on the street said it all. One of the charms of Nelson is the variety right now in our housing stock and in the numbers and varieties of lifestyles and people who live here. And I think it's just really important that we're able to keep our current population here so that they don't have to escape to someplace else to find either affordable or appropriate housing, and also that with the influx of people coming in that we're able to give people specifically what it is that they need. When we talk about different housing options, I think because Nelson has traditionally been a place where there were single-family homes and then a few apartments, for example, we don't really know the wide variety of things that are available out there in the marketplace. And as our population grows, we're going to have to expand not only the types of buildings, but the types of tenure that we offer people so that they'll have an opportunity to rent if that's appropriate for them, to buy, or to enter into the third sector, which would be something like co-op housing or nonprofit housing.
Can you explain a little bit more about nonprofit or co-op housing? I don't think it's a term familiar to a lot of us.
Sure. Most people understand what it is to buy a home, or even nowadays to buy a condominium, which a few years ago I think was somewhat of a mystery to people. And most people are also familiar with rental. Third sector housing, as I call it, combines several different types of housing, most commonly either co-op housing. Sometimes it's sponsored by government and is somewhat similar to a rental situation. And other times it's purchased by people on a nonprofit level. So that third sector is basically a nonprofit housing sector. It's a really useful form of housing because it balances the marketplace and allows people to build and purchase a little bit cheaper. And the interesting aspect in the long term is that it's non-inflationary. It doesn't get sold and resold in the marketplace, and if we have a pool of it, it allows over time for a certain amount of housing to not inflate in the marketplace. The most common forms right now are co-ops, where people put in equity, either the full cost of the unit that they're buying or a partial payment on that cost, and then pay an operating charge over and above that, or a nonprofit. Many seniors, for example, buy what's called a life interest that may be owned by their church or a nonprofit benevolent society, and then they use that housing as long as it suits them, and when they leave, the nonprofit or the church would buy it back from them and sell it to the next person.
Do we have any of those developments in Nelson, the co-op nonprofit?
We have a federally sponsored co-op that just actually was occupied November 1st, but that's the type of government-sponsored co-op that is really not paid for by the individual member, except in that they pay a monthly charge, which over time would pay off the buildings. We don't really right now have equity nonprofit housing, and hopefully in the not-too-distant future we'll be seeing some of that in Nelson.
Excellent.
Now, Jennifer, you're taking a different approach than Judy with the co-op housing and things like that. You've decided to put in your own monies and develop a 42-unit housing complex for sale. You came back to Nelson. Why did you come back? Well, you're in a booming market in Whistler, I understand, and Vancouver. What made you come back to Nelson to risk it on a project like this?
Well, it's interesting. I guess we secured the land, myself and a partner from Whistler, Wendy Brown, 3 years ago. And it was interesting because at that time there was absolutely no way one could consider a project because of not only real estate values in Nelson, but building costs and interest rates, what have you. But watching the market in Whistler gave me a really good insight, lots of experience, and watching a boom supply and demand scenario, which Nelson's in today. People asking why the rent's going up and prices, and it really is. It's a lack of supply. I felt it was a great opportunity this year, doing some market research and just looking at where are seniors going, where are people that are choosing a lifestyle change, having to go, and listening to friends of my parents, saying we have to go to Kelowna or Victoria, we don't want to, and arrest through their marketing and survey, and with Judy's assistance as well. Realized that it was time, it was right for Nelson. So having the land in that location, Morrie, was probably the biggest ticket in, and then just having the gut sort of take the risk now approach to it, because it's a large project for Nelson, and certainly we're well on our way and very successful to date. So
You've already sold a number of the units before they've been built, I understand.
Yeah, we're approximately 40% pre-sold, which is really exciting, and it's going to be interesting. We're watching it starting to come out now.
I heard the word seniors, but what type of people are moving into this type of project compared to the low-income co-op type housing?
We decided that our market, which is probably the greatest thing that assisted us in designing the project, who is that market, who is your purchaser? And we decided that our young active senior market was the one we'd tap in Nelson. Those that are choosing a lifestyle change, that want more leisure, maybe go south in the winter, but they're taking up golfing now instead of gardening, and so that was our prime market. But we're also finding purchasers coming out of Vancouver, young professional individuals, young couples. So probably we've left ourselves open to quite a wide market range. Probably the only market we haven't gone after is the family market.
Great.
The design of the project's quite unique, Jennifer. How and why does it work on that site, at the old hospital site in town here?
Well, it was definitely a challenging site to look at, and the architect had come up with this concept. And after looking at a couple others, we realized that it's such a prominent site. We didn't want to just have one block building that sort of, jarred out as a very obvious high-rise on that site. So with the blending of the 2-story up to the 3-story through the hillside, it really worked nicely. Also, people moving from homes, I was very conscious of the fact that they wouldn't want to be too close to their neighbors. So we went to the exterior breezeway private outside entrance to each unit versus an interior corridor. And that allows not only that private, feeling, but also absolute wonderful views from every unit, because all the units face the lake.
Wonderful. We'll have some shots of that later on in the show.
Oh, excuse me, we've got our first call. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yeah, I'm a homeowner now, and I'm interested in buying a condo at High Street, but if I wait until they're built, they'll be sold out at the rate they're selling now, and in the meantime, I'm just wondering if there's any way I could secure one of these, because I'd have to sell my house to buy one.
Oh.
Yeah, that's... It is a big problem because people are worried if they were to put their property in the market today, it would sell fairly quickly. It's a very buoyant market. So our marketing is through NRS Rousing Real Estate, and with the situation that we've offered, people can in fact be very confident that they can secure the unit today with a very minimum deposit, which will give them that absolute assurance that that unit is theirs. So they have, you know, very good selection at this time. And then they will, through their careful marketing and handling of the property of the purchasers, you know, their home, they can time the possession, the completion and the possession, such that they will definitely be able to make that transition very smoothly and without any headaches or concerns, because it is quite a concern right now.
Does that answer your question?
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. That's good.
There's another sale.
Yeah.
41% now.
Great. Those units, just briefly, I know we're going to show them later on. How many bedrooms are they?
We have 5 floor plans ranging from 1 bedrooms, 756 square feet, up to just under 1,200 square foot 2-bedroom and den units.
And your projects that you've worked on, it's only been 2 years really. You came into town to do this project and got 2 projects underway and completed, and put the bed. People are living in these already.
We've been very fortunate. It has to do with Nelson's spirit. I swear to goodness, I've worked on projects for 12 years similar to this, and the talent in this town and the will to do and the cooperation of all the government agencies, particularly the city, has just been magnificent. The success that we've had in 2 years here just turns my head around and around. I feel like an owl. It's really been wonderful. Some of that just happened to be a bit of luck as well. The timing was certainly right, as Jennifer mentioned, just in terms of the market now for building with interest rates down and so on. I happened into Nelson at a time when the housing need was absolutely critical, and we were able to document that, and that was half the battle in terms of getting some government funding for the 2 projects
Now,
that we
doesn't
succeeded
solve the problem at all, I understand. I mean, you fill those buildings up like that, and you have a waiting list of 250 to get in if there is another project underway. Is that true?
That's right. These projects are just a very small tip of the iceberg in terms of a solution, Morrie, and it's very difficult right now in times of restraint on all levels of government. The federal government is cutting back its commitment to this type of new project by, well, they've cut it back by about 50% over the last 2 years, and of course that slips down into the provincial level. And just as an example, BC Housing allocated about 1,200 units of this type of low rental housing in the province in 1991. That dropped down to 800 units in 92, and it's going to drop further to 600 in 93. So the future is going to be very different from these kinds of projects, and what we're going to be looking at is different ways to finance projects that will achieve the same end, because the need is tremendous and growing every day.
Now, I understand the provincial government is looking at some ways of freeing up other monies to put into this type of housing project. That's not set in stone yet, I guess.
No, one of the things that they are providing, again, which we're very pleased to see, is a bit of seed money for nonprofit organizations or municipalities to do feasibility studies on projects which would not require further government subsidies during their operational phases. So that's a step in the right direction. Nelson made a very good showing at the recent Provincial Commission on Affordable Housing Options, and I feel that we were really listened to by the Commissioner, and we're quite hopeful that some recommendations will go to the Minister that will help to provide some different forms of assistance for people who really can't quite make it into the market that Jennifer is tapping. There's a real huge market out there, as a matter of fact, that neither Jennifer's project nor the 2 projects that I've done so far have been able to address. And that's for those people who really are a little too affluent or have a few too many assets to qualify for current government programs, but still cannot afford something in the market. Jennifer is, believe me, not making a killing ceiling on her development. She's trying to make a living, and costs are very high here. So to build something in the marketplace of the quality and caliber of Jennifer's project costs about what you're seeing in terms of what people have to pay. There's a very slim profit margin there. So the client group that's very difficult to address and whom we hope to target very soon is that client group somewhere in the middle as well.
And this is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is what you call your partial equity
That's right.
groups.
That's where we hope to make use of some creative financing options for people who fall in the middle. So many people come to me, particularly seniors, and say, now I regret having saved or having had this little bit because now I don't qualify for your nice little apartment in Rosemont, and I can't handle this old family home anymore. Where am I going to go? And it's a real problem. But I'm optimistic now with interest rates the way they are, and with the value of people's homes having doubled and redoubled in recent years in Nelson, that many people will now, for the first time in 25 years, find themselves in a position where they can transfer the equity in their little home in Nelson into something more appropriate, where they can age in place. So the opportunity, it's easy to get pessimistic and overwhelmed and say, oh my gosh, the need is tremendous, and how are we going to do this? The opportunity right now is also tremendous.
Well, a couple of other local developers are taking that opportunity on there. There's one at the top of Mill Street and the Sterling Building on Vernon Street. What are those developments all about?
Again, I think it's a really interesting commentary in terms of who's doing what in Nelson, that Jennifer actually grew up here, had the confidence in Nelson to come home and do something for the community. And we have another local person actually who came home from the coast as well, Eugene Jacobson, who is doing some lovely condominiums up at the end of Mill Street. I believe he hopes to do as many as 30 units up there. He's done approximately a dozen right now. They're for a slightly different market than Jennifer's target client group. They're a little bit larger unit. They're a little up higher on the hill and perhaps have a bit more yard space and so on. But essentially, in terms of the tenure, they're a condominium, so people don't have as many worries in terms of maintenance and management and so on. And that's a beautiful project, and it's again a native son come home because of that confidence in Nelson and doing something for the community, returning it back again.
Well, there's a few others.
We'll come back to the Sterling Building in a minute. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yes, I have a question for both Judy and Jennifer.
Yes, go ahead.
This is on prices. Judy mentioned her co-op. I would like to know, like, what income qualifies for her project, and also Jennifer, I would like to ask where her condominium prices start.
Okay, thank you.
You want to start with me? Okay. Sure. The co-op is a federally sponsored project, and this year, for the first time, the federal government did set a cap on incomes for people joining co-ops, and that cap in 1992 is $52,500. So in order to be able to join the co-op, your gross income from all sources must be under $52,000. The co-op also has an agreement with the province of BC, and so half of the co-op members are eligible for geared to income additional assistance, essentially, from the province of BC through BC Housing. So 10 of our units actually are for people who are well under that $52,000, and then 9 of them are for pretty much that middle income group. The people that are in the lower income brackets, the same as in the Cedar Grove rental project, must be under an income ceiling that's set annually by the province. As an example, if you qualified for a 1-bedroom unit, if you were a single or couple, you would have to earn under $15,000 from all sources, and that income goes up with your household size and depending on how many bedrooms you need. This year it goes up to $26,000 gross if you need a 4-bedroom unit, so it depends on your household size.
Oh, and Jennifer?
Yes, our prices range from $100,000 up to $174,900. Qualification is as normal, qualifying via the bank, whether it's a conventional or high ratio mortgage. So if you are an owner, occupant, principal resident, then you would qualify for the CMHC high ratio. Does that answer your question?
They're gone.
They're
Sorry,
gone.
she's
Okay.
gone.
They just wanted the price range, and I think
Okay.
you've given that. What about the rental? In these rental units, the co-op units, actually, you put down a deposit or a co-op membership fee, I guess.
That's right.
What's that, and how
That's
much do you pay per month rent then after that?
We never say rent in a co-op.
Okay, the word then, co-op fees and whatever
right.
it is. Yeah.
The Links Housing Co-op has a share capital amount of $750. That's actually one of the lower shares I've ever heard of in BC. A fairly standard share amount actually is $3,000 because a number of years ago, people who joined co-ops qualified for the provincial homeowner grant for first-time home buyers, and that happened to be $3,000, so coincidentally some co-ops set that as their actual sort of membership or share fee. The fee in the Links is $750, and that makes each household then a voting member of every aspect of the management that goes on is run by the membership. That's the big difference between co-op and rental, that it is actually managed by the residents. Over and above then that share, basically what happens is the members pay a monthly charge that we never call rent. We call it a housing charge that covers the operating costs of the co-op at a break-even level. To be honest, there is some federal subsidy that helps out a bit because with building costs the way they are, Jennifer could certainly verify this, basically the cost of a new unit just on a break-even level is much higher than Nelson's rental market would bear. I know some people feel that the market has risen a great deal, and it has. It still does not come anywhere near paying the break-even cost. So with some assistance from the federal government, the members then pay approximately what it costs to manage the project. So an example in the Links would be a one-bedroom is $441 a month plus utilities.
How does that compare to rental housing in town in another
Yeah,
kind of...
our market is still very, very fractured. It's very difficult to find anything new and nice in Nelson for that amount of money. You'll see many nice one-bedroom units advertised in Nelson now for over $600 a month. On the other hand, you still might find, half a duplex in a very nice little building for $500. It depends on where the current owner of the building is and if they know what's happened in Nelson and a lot of different things. It's very difficult to say, but basically you would never find a new or next to new unit for that price because we're just covering costs. There's no profit for any landlord built in there at all, so you couldn't do it.
And the Sterling building's addressing another need, is it not?
Yes,
Within
I'm
this rental
really
market?
pleased to see what Luke McLaren and his family have done with the Sterling. I mentioned all the different types of people in Nelson, and certainly in every community we have a variety of incomes and lifestyles and so on. We've got our singles, our students, we've got people who rely on social assistance as their only source of income and in order to keep a decent roof over their heads and so on. And certainly a building like the Sterling is of great concern to the city of Nelson. We don't want to become Los Angeles and have a homeless problem, and that's a big worry with rents rising and rental properties being sold and so on. When I heard many months ago that the Sterling building had been sold to someone from the coast, I was very worried about what we call gentrification, and I was fearful that when those units were upgraded, the tenants would have to go, and it's been done in a very, very compassionate manner, and they're still there.
Great.
So we'll talk about that one a little bit more. In fact, Luke may be calling in or dropping by during the show, but we're just going to go right now and show. We did some footage at both of your sites. Most of it is talk over voiceover, but Judy, we're going to ask you for the first little part of yours to give us just a little rundown of what we're seeing once it starts. All
okay,
right?
Sure.
We're going to run now a little film clip on both the High Street development and the Links and Cedar Grove Estates in Rosemont.
Discovered the site, and we persevered, and subject to all the other selling, we secured it. So that was about 3 years ago, and it was time for Nelson. I think Nelson was ready. We studied the market for 3 years, and we saw housing prices going up, and realized then people could turn their house over and afford to come in, or we could at least then afford to build. We designed the project in keeping with the heritage and certainly the location, trying to fit to make it economically viable. 42 units on the site was a major challenge without having it look like a tower sitting here. So we've got two-story buildings on the front of the site, and the back building, the Silver King, is a 3-story apartment block. And because of the difference in elevation, it naturally blends in with the hillside and gyro above. The suites are all level entry, and there's a range from 1-bedroom up to 2-bedroom and dens. Average is a 2-bedroom unit. Price $140 would be the average price. They start at $99, go up to $174.9. And we've been just extremely pleased with Nelson's support. We've had successful pre-sales. We're about 40% pre-sold. And the really neat thing is that all units are desirable. They all have views. They all face the lake and the mountains. So there's no sub-unit, so to speak. And I think probably we'll find that they'll sell actively because of the selection. You know, it's really good.
Are they using local people to work with Kulas?
As much as possible. I think the nature of the site, the concrete work, the elevators, the building, they've had to pull in a lot of their experienced crews to get this thing off and running. We probably had about a month more site prep than originally anticipated. However, by doing some real serious technical design work on the concrete, I think we've saved some time in construction as well. So all in all, hopefully we'll stay on schedule for completion sometime May '93. Well, just as we're walking here, this is the main entry. It'll be the turnaround point, so coming off High Street. The access to the underground parking will be sort of straight ahead. And onto the left here we'll have some guest parking, but there's covered parking, so underground parking for each unit, and ample guest parking. We're over our required amount, and I'm very happy about the way that's worked out. Lots of storage as well. The front buildings the footings are being poured now, and the walls, concrete walls going up. They around the side, they should be finished the blasting here sometime midweek, we anticipate, and then they'll start the concrete on the main parking structure here.
And as we discussed before, these buildings are aimed at who?
I've probably used young active seniors more than any description. They're definitely people that are mostly able, and I think the location's great because they don't have to drive in the winter, they can walk to town. We have a few snowbirds that head south, young individual professionals, couples, so we're getting a variety. Definitely we didn't target the family market. I think more the people that wanted a lifestyle change, they don't want the maintenance of their home, brand new appliances. I mean, they walk into a turnkey operation that really is, it's going to be nice, and something that they can enjoy more leisure time. So people golfing and tennising and what have you, this will give them that freedom. I would have loved to have put a single family residence on the site, but with the land costs and certainly financing and what have you, the numbers have to work. And to build an underground parking structure, that concrete, you have to have the numbers break out. So we decided to go to what we again felt was the right size. And as far as your question on where are the people coming from, a lot of people locally have expressed interest over a number of years, and when we announced that we were going to go ahead, they were literally knocking on the door of NRS, who's doing our marketing, and we just kept them apprised of details and drawings as we did all of our research and planning. I think that we're seeing a huge influx into Nelson from the coast, Toronto, Kelowna, and people again making that lifestyle change, and they're getting out of the corporate rat race, and I think a lot of people can live in Nelson and manage businesses maybe in the city or commute to whatever job they have by fax and phone. They can probably do most of the work at home. So there's I think an interesting experience for Nelson, and finally the Kootenays are having their turn, and really people getting tired of Kelowna. Right. Nelson's such a desirable spot that it'll only be and always will be, so I'm convinced. So you can see they've taken out a lot of dirt, and I think the main thing is to create that storage underneath, and also to provide the views and the elevation change to the back building. We'll have exceptional views as well.
This is a little 22-unit seniors building at Cedar Grove Estates. It was sponsored by the Nelson District Housing Society, and it's subsidized by BC Housing. We're very proud of this little building. The lounge that you see here can be a multi-purpose facility in the future, and as people age in the building, if they, for example, would like to have a meal service, we have a beautiful little kitchen here that they currently use for just activities and potlucks and so on, but we could have a nice little dining service in here. These are just some shots of some of the common areas in the building. They have a nice little laundry room. One of my favorite aspects of this project is a little built-in ironing board in that room, and they've got exercise rooms and so on. So they can perform an awful lot of different types of activities in various areas of the building. The co-op sector generally does have a lot of links to other co-ops, other housing co-ops, and to the community. So it's a bit of a double entendre here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's, again, how many units here?
There are 19 families living in the Links Housing Co-op. Our housing format is basically fourplexes. It's a stacked townhome design with the larger families living in 2, 3, or 4-bedroom townhomes above lovely little 1-bedroom suites that are suitable for singles or couples. One of the reasons that the Links Co-op decided to build in some 1-bedroom apartments was that in the last project I worked on, which was a low-income rental project, the client groups were targeted by BC Housing as seniors and families. And so there were no young singles or couples actually in the project at all. The smallest family housing that we had was a 2-bedroom townhome, and you're not really allowed to overhouse a single or a couple in a 2-bedroom unit. It's a waste of a space that more people could use. And so it was a decision on the part of the co-op for a number of reasons to include some 1-bedroom units, because certainly there are singles and couples in need as well. Incomes of people range from very, very low up to approximately $52,000 a year. So it's more like a real neighborhood. We have quite a combination: singles, couples, families, young folks, older folks. It's a real neighborhood.
That's part of the object of this thing.
That's right, that's right. It's the real world. And the nice part of it is that all these people mix a lot because the co-op is resident managed, which makes it very, very different from rental housing. It's an old-fashioned community where people work together and get to know each other. If somebody ever has a problem, they know where to run for help. They get to decide together the really important things that make a community, things like the rules about pets and kids and parking and decorating and yard maintenance and so on. So it's a real community effort.
Welcome back to Nelson Nightline. We've just saw some shots of both of the projects, or 3 of the projects that you ladies are working on. I guess all being success stories in the making here to fill out the projects and have people on a waiting list, and you'd have 40% sold. Other people are doing the same thing now, I guess. There's Dan Magali, I understand, is putting in some houses behind Rosie's Cappuccino Bar. You mentioned Jean Jacobson. Right next to your project, the Silver Heights is going in. Quite a bit of building boom going on here. Obviously the market is there.
Yeah. What is the Silver Heights one again? I'm sorry, I know you touched on it, but I'm getting the Links and Silver Heights mixed up there in Rosemont.
Silver Heights is just right adjacent to our co-op. It actually created a little bit of confusion when we were marketing our co-op units, because Silver Heights is closer to Silver King Road, which is the main road there. Silver Heights is just 3 little duplex buildings that were built by a developer who came in from Vernon and saw a good thing when it was available. And so he very quickly built 3 nice little duplex buildings that are for sale, and I don't know if there are any left right now. People, if they want them, should hurry, because I see people moving into those, and I went through them the other day, and they're just a real nice little 3-bedroom townhome unit, and they're going fast as well.
The other 2 developments, Judy, what designer, what architect did you work with on that? They're both very tastefully done, both inside and out, especially with the landscaping.
Well, we're very delighted. We actually got sort of a package deal. They were both government-sponsored projects, and I guess when you need a specialist, you go to a specialist. In a past life of mine, I had met Mike Koulos, who's the president of Koulos Development Corporation out of Kelowna, and he has been specializing in doing government housing projects for about the last 5 or 6 years in the interior. Has a wonderful reputation. He's a great guy, and he just had that specific expertise that I needed. He works very closely with almost an in-house architect. His name is Rick Thorburn. He actually is from Vernon. He's a wonderful guy to work with as well, and he can dance up a storm at a Christmas party too. So yeah, we're very pleased with what Rick has designed for us and what Mike has built for us. We're just proud as punch.
Cedar Grove was another tough site, the same as Jennifer's.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it was a little shocking. When you work on these government projects, of course, the budget is very inflexible. Once you give them a quote, it's pretty much graven in stone, and I don't know, stone may be the wrong thing to even bring up here, but yeah, we tried to leave more trees and so on that beautiful little site in Cedar Grove, and we've now since replaced the forest with some nice landscaping, but after we set off all that dynamite to knock that mountain down, it was pretty incredible. It was very costly, but it has turned out to be an absolutely beautiful project, and I think the neighbors, although at first they were rather stunned and frightened, are really delighted with the end product.
And Jennifer, High Street Place as well, I don't know if we can get another close-up of it, is an extremely attractive development project for that location. Was it a local architect, someone from outside?
Well, it's difficult. I would have loved to have used local, but having my residence in Whistler and using Vancouver at the time, which, you know, was probably a course of a year and a half of planning and designing to 2 years. So I did actually consult an architect in Vancouver. And again, when we ended up looking for contractors, kudos really shone above everybody in the area, and certainly wanted the best. I really believed a project of this magnitude, we needed the most experience you know, that we could get our hands on. And again, Rick Thorburn was involved, and I really liked his work. We'd gone through a number of projects in the Okanagan, so he's really done a fantastic job for us.
Now, you've both mentioned the cost factor. Average cost per square foot is obviously higher here. We have to ship in all the raw materials, some of the expertise and things like that. Is there a ballpark number per square foot for development in either or both projects? Obviously differently, but what was your cost per square foot, or what will it be?
You know, really, it's a tough one to actually peg, because we're using, well, Judy's project is you know, quite a different product type. And again, in Kelowna, a number of the Okanagan projects that we looked, we were going on an interior quality basis to establish that. But on the exterior, we're going to stucco, brick, and shingles, and again, trying to get the texture and bring out the heritage qualities and the charm in Nelson. So in keeping with that, of course, the cost is significantly higher than just going to a plain wood or vinyl siding or solid stucco. Our costs are definitely up there, but in general, I would have to say that it's probably somewhere 20–25% higher than the Okanagan and or Vancouver. Land costs certainly are probably you know, in reverse, but the construction costs are. It was a bit of a shock to myself, because you know, talking to people at the coast and getting these contractors, and until the numbers started coming out, you don't really know what you're dealing with. And then you get on site, like Judy said, and poor Mike, I think, Kulos has realized that every site will be rock, so just be prepared. And that's definitely an added cost as well.
You've had that, a lot of blasting on both sides, obviously.
Yeah, we tried to build and design around some of the rock, but of course, you know, it was a vein of rock that went right from Gyro Park down, so.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah.
You mentioned parking on the tape. That must have been a difficult aspect of the design as well.
Actually, Marianne, probably the most, you know, I think any architect or developer has to deal with parking. That's the number one, and project sort of stems from that. So to accommodate the number of cars we had to was definitely covered, and we're sort of half in, half out of the ground with our parking. We do have the one covered parking stall secured, included with each strata lot sale or each condominium. We also have additional covered parking that we haven't allocated or decided yet. There's people that are saying we might want to, and so we'll deal with that. But we also have 15 guest parking stalls, which is you know, more than are required. In fact, we're very healthy in the parking, and I think there was some concern from initial meetings and reaction from people that might be interested that parking was an issue, but in actual fact, we resolved that by redesigning and creating more parking, so very comfortable.
When you're only 1 block away from the foot of Vernon Street to head down into Baker in the downtown core.
And we're hoping that we're going to alleviate the parking problem a bit, somewhat. You know, people will be choosing our location, you know, so they can walk to town. And a lot of elderly people just don't like to drive in the winter anymore. So it'll it'll be wonderful that way.
Perfect. Wake up.
Yes. Sorry. You are both now filling a need for 100-odd families and people. What is the solution for the many people that either can't get into the market because they can't afford to buy a new property, and because of the problems getting co-ops and low rental housing off the ground, What do we do about the people? There are people, we just saw them on the show here, saying, I can't find a place. Are there any solutions that come to mind that people can find?
First of all, I think that it should be stated that almost any project that happens in Nelson, aside from those people from away who come in, and certainly there are those people who are coming in to buy, say, some of the condominiums going up and so on, but every time there's movement in the market, some of the people, for example, who will be moving into Jennifer's project will be selling other homes, which will then become available for younger families on the marketplace and so on. So just getting those vacancy rates up a slight bit might soften the market enough to ease things, and so every time any development goes in, it should have a positive impact on the rest of the community. But the city is looking at all kinds of different ways in the future to try to promote housing too, and we hope through this provincial housing options commission that there will be ways in future that we can, for example, give tax breaks to people who put secondary suites in new homes. The municipality is looking at ways to encourage continued high density. Perhaps in some way they'll be able to give preferential tax status to multifamily dwellings or to dwellings that are nonprofit or for special needs seniors and so on. So there are a lot of people looking at ways to bring the costs down. In terms of producing rental housing, the biggest problem is the capital cost and the mortgage costs of carrying those units. And hopefully there will be some initiatives coming out that will further lower interest costs for this type of development. Right now we're almost to the point with interest rates where a developer could build rental housing and make it. Not quite. And if some new types of funding become available or mortgage financing become available for rental type of housing, perhaps some kind of government bond issue or something, then we may see a softening in that rental market, which is really desperately needed right now.
What about, Judy, with the aspirations of both the Kootenai School of Arts and Nelson University Centre, and Nelson's aspiration as a whole to become an education centre? If both of those, or even one of those, come on stream for student housing in a city that has a 0.4% rental vacancy, I mean, the situation doesn't bode well for that.
Right.
Either.
I've had discussions already with the Kootenai School of the Arts in particular, but also earlier on when I first came to Nelson, actually even with Nelson University Centre as well. And it's definitely an issue. It's a larger issue even than the universities. It is definitely an economic development issue. We do not want Nelson to be Toronto, where, yeah, sure, you can get a job, but there's no place to live, or sure, you can come to school, but there's no place to live. You can't have a decent city without decent housing, and the student housing problem is going to be a significant one. I mentioned that there may be ways in future to bring costs down for financing rental housing. I believe that at least in a sort of roommate type of situation, that with interest rates even where they are today, if we sat down and did a feasibility study to do some student housing somewhat like they have, say, at Medicine Hat, where roommates share townhomes and so on, I think in 1992 that's economically viable, and we will be looking in the very near future at the potential for developing some student housing that will pay for itself.
Excellent. The building permits within the city of Nelson have gone from approximately, was it 2 million in 1988? Up to, they project, including your development, Jennifer, about 20 to 22 million this year.
24.
24, pardon me. I mean, that is a significant jump in just 4 or 5 years in terms of building permit values. You think that would be addressing somewhat of a problem, and it doesn't seem to be doing it at all, again, because of the numbers of new people coming in. We seem to be playing catch up.
Right. Well, it does address the problem for those people who can afford it. This boom and this increase in rental rates and in real estate prices is very good news for a large number of people. For that client group, for example, who want to buy into Jennifer's project, their homes which weren't worth enough money to buy into something like Jennifer's project 3 or 4 years ago now are. So that's good news for a lot of people. But there is an underside to that development, and many of the people who are in trouble are in fact the people who didn't either have the means or the foresight to buy into the market when prices were low, and those are the people that are having worries now. As well, some of the seniors who, rather than putting their money into their homes, put their money into some other type of investment and have been counting on high returns in terms of their income with interest rates, they now are feeling a very definite pinch rather than a benefit now that interest rates have come down. I'm talking to seniors whose incomes have dropped by 50% in the last year and a half, depending on what their source of income was. And so there's a flip side to every coin, and all of this development has been really, really beneficial to a large number of people and is able to allow us to meet the needs of some people, like our retirees who haven't had decent retirement housing here in the past. But now we have to deal with those others. We earlier mentioned the development in the Sterling block, and I'd like to get back just to that again for a moment. I think we're going to see a need for more of that type of housing. For those people who are on the bottom of the economic ladder, we don't want those people to fall off. I mean, I don't want to sound sort of alarmist, but I think where do you go from the Annabelle block or from the Sterling? You go to the street, and we just don't need that in Nelson, and I think we have the type of town that isn't going to allow that to happen. That's why I was so relieved to see the manner in which this renovation of the Sterling block was done. And the city was very much a part of those negotiations. Part of making the cost of that renovation of that rather derelict building was to add additional suites into the building. And the initial proposal came forward from the McLarens, who are doing the work, to put in, I believe it was 7, possibly 8 more very small apartments that have shared washroom facilities and so on. But we have national building codes to meet, and there was a real difficulty with the size and type of units that were going in. But through a real collaborative, cooperative process, and I've just seen this over and over again with the City of Nelson saying, not why shouldn't this happen, but how can we help to make it work and help it make it right. They sat down with Luke and his architect, and they sat down with me, and we talked to the Downtown Eastside Residents Association in Vancouver. We went all over the place to try to figure out the best answers to these things, and we came out with a wonderful solution. And that building now is going to continue to house some of the clients that were there before, as well as some new ones. They've added features like a small in-house laundromat to provide another service for people, and it's being done tastefully, it's being done to code, and it's a wonderful addition to the city. The people in the Downtown Eastside Residents Association in Vancouver tell me that if you're going to get rid of your sort of apartment hotel type of housing, you're going to have homeless people. So we have other buildings in town that I think we should be looking at, and perhaps talking about nonprofit organizations getting involved if there are not more developers with the foresight and humanity that Luke has shown, to be sure that we have housing that is affordable and decent and appropriate for those people at the lower end. And I think that he's set a really good standard, and I'm just really pleased to see that, and I hope that that the private market will continue to meet that need. If they don't, that third sector, nonprofit sector, will have to move in to fill that need.
Is there a committee or organization in place right now for anybody who's listening that wants to get involved and help on some of these issues and problems that they can get, can join right now? Or
there is an arm's length committee of City Council that I work with, just called the Nelson Housing Committee. It's chaired by Donna Graychick, and if people would be interested in becoming involved in city housing issues, they might want to be involved in that committee. And I'm also working with a nonprofit organization, the Nelson and District Housing Society, which will be looking for some more new board members in the not too distant future, and they're the ones who have actually spearheaded Cedar Grove. They also gave the Links Housing Co-op a kickstart by loaning them a bit of seed money, and they're looking at these issues of student housing and low-income rental housing and nonprofit housing in some detail, and hope to be able to fill some of that gap.
Well, as you say, the community spirit, and I think if the community is aware of some issues and problems, they do come behind it to try and help to solve it. So it's important that they know what the issues are, which is in part what we've tried to do tonight with this show.
Right. Well, I think one of the other things that your project does for people is it keeps them in Nelson. You're aiming your project at seniors, and I would presume a lot of people from Nelson that want to move out of their own homes are moving into your complex instead of leaving Nelson for Kelowna or the coast. This, what did you call it the other day, age in place thing, a prime term. And so it's a big plus too. We're not losing our seniors to other places. They're going to stay here too, to keep that eclectic mix that you both allude to here.
I think somebody we don't want to leave out tonight either are the developers in town who have all along been filling the need as it developed over time, doing the single-family homes here in town. And those people, the individuals, and then the contractors who are renovating buildings, which otherwise would fall into disrepair and so on. And one in particular that I'd like to mention is the little renovation job that Tony Tett did on Hall Street, right by Market Equipment. I think that fellow deserves an award for that, doggone it.
That's wonderful.
Taking a little old building that was probably really just not fit to live in and practically not worth working on and turning it into the most charming little apartment building that you would ever want to see. I highly recommend people go have a look at that and pat Tony on the back for that kind of initiative and imagination and hard work. And that kind of thing is happening in different little pockets all around this community where things are just being made nicer all the time, sometimes by individual home buyers and other times by people like Tony who are doing it as a business, but providing a real service, keeping these heritage areas alive and improving things and making the city just a great little place.
Quality seems to be the word, isn't it? Quality of life, quality of development, High Street being one, Tony's another.
And all of that, you know, I think just really it's why people like myself are driven to come back to Nelson, and it always will be. And you know, we've been very fortunate to have a few people in our project come back. They had to move to Victoria, and they've now bought into High Street, which is really exciting. And I think it's just a wonderful place. And probably because it's so nice and these people keep doing it, we're going to have more and more of a problem of you know, the influx and people leaving places like Whistler. And I think a lot of people will leave Nelson too and go to Creston or Nakusp, and you know, the rollover will continue to happen.
Well, there is a major building or buying boom in Nakusp now. I was talking to an agent that works out in Nakusp, and he had one day 12 people from Kelowna come, and some buy and some look at to buy houses in Nakusp because they find it too busy and too booming in Kelowna, so they're trading out. And obviously that'll come this way too ultimately.
Well, Nakusp and Grand Forks in the 1991 census have had the most growth. We got one last call. Good evening, Nelson Nightline.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering on that High Street project, what percentage or how many local contractors or laborers are working on this project?
Okay, thank you.
It's difficult for me to answer exactly. To date, there's been probably almost 98%, but I would say as the project goes on, we'll see a mixture. I would anticipate somewhere 60-40, depending. Koulos would be able to give Mike Koulos Construction a more accurate percentage, but certainly there are a number of trades that they still haven't addressed, and so if you're in that business, I would definitely approach Koulos Construction in Kelowna. But hopefully, I've encouraged as many locals as possible and have also expressed that's my philosophy. It's beyond my control, but however, if the ability's there, then Koulos will certainly be entertaining all locals.
So this Koulos company, they're from Kelowna?
They are based out of Kelowna.
They're the same construction company that built the projects up on Silver King Road?
That's correct.
Were most of the subcontractors came in from Kelowna on that job, isn't that true?
On the Kelowna job, Judy, I'm not sure.
No, on the one that built on the
Tower
Silver King Road, most of the subcontractors were all out of Kelowna.
A number of them were, that's right. Again, it's because of the tight budgets we have on these government projects. Whenever the local people were able to give competitive prices and competitive time frames, whenever possible, certainly we used local labor. As a matter of fact, Koulos even bought one of his vehicles here because Whitewater Ford was able to match the price that he could get somewhere else. But basically, because our costs on nonprofit housing, government-sponsored, are so much higher than they are elsewhere, and we're not allowed any extra dollars, the money is what talks, and so if someone was able to make a competitive bid locally, they got the job. If they weren't, the name of the game was to get the housing, and so in some instances those jobs did in fact go to outsiders, but as often as possible we had locals.
But in fact, actually, on those jobs, the laborers were actually also from out of town, and I don't know, I think on some of these projects that are happening here in town, yes, sometimes the contractors can't be competitive or we're busy, but I think it should be responsible that most of the laborers should come from this area. We have a lot of young people here who aren't working, and they could be put to work on this project. They shouldn't be bringing laborers in from Kelowna to work on shovels and do the laboring work.
Okay, thank you, caller.
We're going to wrap up the show. It's 30 seconds to go here. Well, I think that is important, what the fellow's trying to say, and the fact that as many as you can, obviously for the specialized things, if it's put in an elevator or to put in something specialized, and that's obviously up to the contractor and the people putting the projects up. I think we had to let them say
And
that.
even when it is outside labor coming in, there's those dollars, those other dollars are spent within the community as well. So ideally, the ideal situation would be to tap into the local resource, but it's not always possible.
Thank you very much. This has been Nelson Nightline.
Thank you both.
Well, thank you.
That hour goes fast.